coming. So as you can see from our title of the study, we conducted an acoustic analysis of English vowels, and we looked at two aspects. Firstly, clear speaking style, and secondly, vowel tensity. So what is clear speech? So as you may already know, it's generally characterized by greater articulatory movement and slower speaking rates as compared to conversational speech. And for vowels, more specifically, these are their articulatory features. And the corresponding acoustic features include an expansion of vowel space, an increase of formant contour dynamicity, and a stretching of vowel durations. And interestingly, or at least we found it interesting, that tense vowels also share these features compared to lax vowels in English. So in this study, we wanted to explore the interaction between clear speech vowel features and vowel tensity. And we hypothesized that clear speech would show greater tense-lax difference than conversational speech, because speakers want to make their vowel productions more distinctive in clear speech, and therefore they will tend to increase the acoustic distance or differences between vowel categories. So to carry out the study, we recruited 18 speakers, and they produced these 6 vowels repeatedly. And as you can see here, we have 3 pairs of tense-lax vowels. And we told our participants that we were testing a speech recognition program, but in fact, the program only appeared to perceive and recognize their vowel productions. And in reality, all responses given to the participants were planned. So as you can see in this example, so the program asked the speaker to say the word chord. So he or she just say chord. And then the program showed the planned response, and in this example, it's keyed. So of course you have to press no, and then say the word again, and now in clear speaking style. So chord, something like that. So in a single trial, we obtained a conversation token and also a clear token of the same word. Then we conducted these acoustic measurements. So first of all, for the temporal domain here, the static measurement was simply vowel duration. And then for the dynamic measurement, we obtained the ratio between vowel duration and word duration, which informed us about the change of vowel duration relative to the change of word duration in clear speech. And for this spectral domain, the static measurement was carried out by taking the formant frequencies at one time point, and that was the vowel midpoint. And we converted our spectral data to bar. And the dynamic measurement compared the relative formant frequency changes between 2 time points. So one at 20 and the other at 80% of the vowel portion. So the changes of the first formant, second formant, and the third formant were added together to produce this spectral change value. And this value quantifies the dynamic formant movement that we are interested in. So for our results, first of all, vowel duration results, they are consistent with previous studies in that vowels were longer in clear speech compared to conversational speech. And apart from that, we also found a significant interaction between style and tensity. So we further investigated the duration increase for tense and lax vowels, which showed that all tense vowels had a greater increase than lax vowels in clear speech. This means that tense vowels had greater modifications, and also tense-lax difference became greater in clear speech. For duration ratios, we found a significant interaction between style tensity and vowel type. And by looking at the ratios for each vowel, we found an increase in ratio for the tense vowels E and U. But for the lax vowels, the ratio became smaller. Therefore, these tense vowels stretched relatively more than the word itself, but Lax vowels stretched relatively less. So here we saw opposite directions of modifications, and tense Lax difference in fact became greater in clear speech. For our spectral results, we first examined the formant frequency changes for each vowel, and the results were highly consistent with previous findings. Now, here, all vowels showed differences of formant frequency values across speaking styles, with the exception of E. So generally, the difference between tense Lax vowels was maintained across speaking styles, except for the E-I vowel pair. And the vowel space perimeter results show that it was greater in clear speech, suggesting that there was an expansion of vowel space, and that was consistent with previous findings. However, there was no style by tensity interaction. So in general, there was no change in tense Lax perimeter difference across speaking styles. And the dynamic spectral results showed significant style by tensity interaction and style by vowel type interactions. Then in our follow-up analyses, we found that tense vowel E was less dynamic in clear speech, but the Lax vowels and O became more dynamic in clear speech. So again, we obtained opposite directions of modifications for tense and Lax vowels here. And when we look at each vowel pair, we notice that the tense Lax difference became greater in clear speech as well. So, to sum up, our results support our hypothesis, that is, the tense Lax difference generally increased in clear speech in both temporal and spectral domains, as you can see in our summary table there. However, our results showed more consistent modifications in the temporal domain than in the spectral domain. So we think that when articulatory constraints limit the modifications of the primary spectral cues to English tense Lax distinction, so on the one hand, the intrinsic tensity contrasts are still maintained in across speaking styles. And it was especially clear from our vowel space results. And on the other hand, the extrinsic style modifications have to resort to secondary temporal cues to English tense Lax distinction. Also, there was a trade-off in the use of acoustic cues for modifications. And we think that this was motivated by the intrinsic acoustic differences between vowel categories. For instance, Lax vowels are intrinsically more dynamic than tense vowels. So it was Lax vowels which became even more dynamic in clear speech instead of tense vowels. However, in the temporal domain, since tense vowels are intrinsically longer than Lax vowels, tense vowels were stretched even more in clear speech than Lax vowels. So taken together, our study showed compensatory modifications for tense Lax vowels in different acoustic domains. And last but not least, this study is only a part of our three-stream clear speech study. So the other two streams are vowel articulation and intelligibility. And we are still running our intelligibility testing study, but we are going to present the vowel articulation study in this conference in poster session 5 on Thursday at 3 p.m. So hope to see you there. Thank you.
From Reading. Hi. I was a little bit worried about your use of the word conversational.
Okay.
You know, a single word in isolation. I mean, it's not. I realize it's just a tag for you, and you could use any word. But somebody coming along like me might think it's connected speech. You know, conversation. Using have just one word with a computer probably doesn't count as conversation.
Thank you. I do understand that. Well, first of all, I think for practical reason, if we run the experiment like that, it's easier to start with only a single word.
Yeah, sure.
And the other thing that came up when we were running our experiments, our speakers tend to enunciate when they do the first production. So what we did was just keep telling them that, okay, do the first one naturally. So it's in a sense that we try to make sure the first production as well conversationally as possible. Yeah, but of course I understand if it's a connected speech study, it would be better.
You can call it citation form.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I guess my take would be that the first one was probably irritated and the second one was angry. I was thinking about this possible dynamic difference for the tense versus lax, and it just seems to me that the lax vowels may seem more dynamic simply because they're shorter and more subject to more articulation with the adjacent consonants. Did you take that into account?
We know that lax vowels are intrinsically more dynamic, not just because they're shorter. In some previous studies, they found that the off-glide for lax vowels are longer than tense vowels. So from our results, when we compared between lax vowels as a group and tense vowels as a group, they were more dynamic than tense vowels across speaking styles. So that's why we think that they became even more dynamic in clear speech, while we can see that either tense vowels showed no change in formant dynamicity or they reduced in clear speech. So I hope that answers your question.
Well, it seems like your 20 and 80% points were possibly within the format transitions for the consonant, and maybe the consonant is more emphasized.
Yeah. I guess we try to control for that by maintaining the same phonetic context across the experiment, so as to minimize the contextual effects.
If